botanists figured it out for themselves. That's according to an article in the journal Nature by David Bierling of the University of Sheffield's Department of Animal and Plant Sciences. Bierling writes that between 1661 and 1665, Newton, while at Cambridge University, kept a notebook in which he jotted down musings on various matters. Buried between sections on philosophy and attraction electrical infiltration is a half-page on the subject of vegetables. There, the young polymath tackled the topic of plant sap, and how it might rise from the roots to the leaves. Newton suggested that what he called a globule of light shining on a leaf could knock away a particle of water, causing the juices of the plant to riseth upward. He's loosely describing what we now refer to as the process of transpiration, in which the energy of sunlight causes water to evaporate from a plant's surface, thereby drawing water up through the stem. Where Sir Isaac came up with this idea, we'll never know, but it suggests that before he saw that the apple must come down, he was doing some serious thinking about, within the tree, what goes up. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
One name you should know, the best place you can go, Toyota of Escondido.
It's summer savings time at Toyota of Escondido. For the first time ever, you can drive home any bold new 2015 Camry or gas-saving Prius Hybrid with 0 APR factory financing for 60 months. Don't miss out.
Toyota of Escondido. Toyota of Escondido.
Come in today and save more than ever before on over 12.5 acres of new and pre-owned Toyotas. 0 APR factory financing on approved good credit. 60 monthly payments of $16.67 per 1,000 borrowed. Down payment varies with credit.
Toyota of Escondido.
Financing includes dealer fees and excludes tax and license. Ends July 6th.
E-Digits. Lock them in for more information, recreation, and guaranteed fun. Kcaa 1050 AM.
To talk to you guys this week. I think we're going to solve a few problems. I know that I've got some on the table. This is Wallace Allen on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Folks, before we get started, Pastor Ray Turner, a good friend of ours, someone that we love very much, had reason to, my man had a heart attack. He had a 5-way bypass last week. He's doing much better, and your prayers are working for him, and I want you to keep praying for Ray Turner, and pray for my friend Reginald Young. He had a shoulder operation, and he's not able to write those checks, and we need him to, get that shoulder in shape so he can continue to keep the world turning as he spends that good money. Folks, we've got a few things on the table. I don't know if you have had the opportunity to pay attention to the environmental situation, both the social environment and the physical environment. I'm very concerned about the fact that our ocean has waste in it, a big 40-mile wide collection of gook. Folks, we've got to start paying more attention to what we're doing to the environment around us. That's us. We, of course, we're not in charge as individuals of what takes place in the ocean and what boats are allowed to dump their stuff out in the middle of the ocean. I understand there's more oil dumped in the ocean on a monthly basis than was dumped in the ocean down there in New Orleans. We've got to pay attention, folks. Now, the Colorado River, the EPA was doing a testing or a process the other day. And Mr. Leonard Evans is on the phones with us, by the way. Mr. Evans, how are you this morning?
Delightful.
I'm going to undelight you a little bit when I read off some of these problems that we're dealing with. And, of course, not only are we dealing with them, we're going to win because we do not lose. Part of that has to do with the great power of social networking. We've got a survey out that shows that over the last last couple of years, since Ferguson, basically, how the attitudes about race relationships in America have changed. And it's not because of our great policies that are going on from our government, but because people are writing and getting involved in social media and talking to each other. You know, there's something to this thing, I guess, of sitting at the table talking through the phone. It kind of filters and buffers what people are saying to each other. I don't know. I used to think that people sitting at the table, 4 people at the table, all of them on their cell phones talking and chatting and stuff. I was under the impression they were talking to people that were far away. Maybe they're talking to the people right across the table from them. Maybe it's just an easier conversation. But I tell you what, it's being very, very effective. The race relations, important. 50 years ago, watch the Watts Rebellion, the Watts Reaction. Some folks call it the Watts Riot. 50 years ago. 50 years ago. And last year, Ferguson, and since Ferguson, a number of other incidents prior to Ferguson. Actually, there's been a continuum of incidents with African Americans and the police since and before Watts 1965. But something electric took place last year with Ferguson. People were able to see more of it, hear more about it, and respond more to it. And the response from the people seems to be the thing that keeps us going and making the changes necessary. Our government, our policymakers, they need an extra foot. And it's not to help them walk, it's to help them get their minds together, and you can figure out where to put that foot. My point is that when the people of authority step up and lead like they should, we will be in better shape. But the only way they're going to step up is if we, as individuals, as groups, stay on them, call them, write them, talk about them, protest when they speak. But those things seem to be working. And all of those things, as I lead up to those, I want to show you one very simple thing that demonstrates what I'm talking about. And then we can go anywhere we want to with this conversation. The authorities that have allowed National Football League to have this argument about Tom Brady putting too much air or taking air out of a football, that he's responsible for doing that, and that there's nobody in authority that could have done anything about what he was doing throughout the game or throughout the season or throughout his career of dealing and changing the pressure in a football. That doesn't sound right to me at all. But before I give you my solution, let's discuss the problem a little bit more, or whatever problem Mr. Evans may have this morning, because right at 10, 16, 17, I'm going to start giving you some solutions. Well, I promise to give you one more example of idiocy. Yeah, we'll decide what to do after we get a chance to talk to Mr. Evans. How are you this morning, Leonard?
Terrific.
Yeah, you
delightful. And watching this, two things. The presidential contest and the Iran deal. What's going on with this Iran deal? And I think that both of them offer a lot to talk about.
Especially in terms of what are the people that we are trusting to do and take care of us. What are they doing? What is their attitude? And how can we influence them? And Leonard, do you think that they need to be more influenced, or do you think things are bouncing around in the correct chambers and giving us an opportunity to see a little bit more before we make our?
I'll give you the observations of someone who, in their career, was very successful in that they were effective in what they set out to do.
Okay.
And how they analyzed the government. Now, this was a Marine general. And he said, you got a big book that tells you all about the military. He says, that's a bunch of junk. The military has one purpose, to be successful in battle. So when he talked about the government, he said the problem with the government was that people were not doing their jobs. The government approached solving a problem by adding more people to do the jobs that the first group wasn't doing. He said all that does is grow government and waste money and guarantee, because you have somebody else to do it, that the first group will continue to not do their job. So he said if you focused on getting people to do their job, things would run much more smoothly, and you would have a better government and a smaller government.
Who helps these guys define their job? That seems to be the problem. They kind of look like they're running around in circles with like chickens with their heads cut off.
Well,
one minute
really.
they say one thing, and the next week they say something else.
They're not doing what they're supposed to do. I'll give you an example.
It's like what you said with the generals and with the army. They're supposed to be successful at war, but they seem to be much more successful as raising the money and threatening about war. And they spend so much money scaring people about wars that, they seem to look forward to instead of putting their efforts into avoiding wars.
Very true. And this guy wound up sidetracked eventually. He's a great hero, the greatest Marine, if you ask a Marine, that ever existed. But what they did with him when he got to a position where he could affect some of the excesses that you're talking about is they sidetracked him. He never got a chance to do that. So there is that element of the military that just wants to make money, that wants conflict. It's good for their business.
That element seems to sit like a spider over the top of everything else, where the spider, who's got more legs, a spider or an octopus? Because we want something with a lot of legs in this imagery here, because they're touching so much. They're over everything. It's like an umbrella and this umbrella is based or protecting the people who are trying to make money. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that money's important, but money sitting in the same hands all the time is not effective, and we see the issue and problem with that. It kills the game called Monopoly. You can't even play Monopoly if the money doesn't go around the board. So we have that as an issue. What's going on with the people who are in charge? Are they stepping up? We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to give you an example of someone that we know is blatantly, obviously, the person in most charge, and they are allowing the buck to be passed to someone else in terms of this Tom Brady football deflate gate, which is symbolic to me of the deflation of America's integrity. We as the people, I believe we have it, but the people that we have hired to work for us seem to be not only, if they were asleep at the wheel, they'd have more wrecks and we'd get to replace more of them. So they're not really asleep at the wheel. I think they're just manipulating the wheel so they can stay at the wheel. Not a really nice group of people. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, on the case for truth and justice, with the right information to help improve the situation. Hey, we got work to do, folks. We'll be back right after this break.
Bad company, I can't deny. Bad company.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
For more local radio every day, tune into KCAA Loma Linda.
Is our claim to fame.
All right, folks, take me out to the old ball game. Except we're going to talk about a football game. All right, here we go. Tom Brady. We've got a situation where they say Tom Brady affected the pressure of the football. Said he was doing something wrong. That by lowering the pressure of the football or raising it, I don't really know which one they accused him of doing.
He was lowering the pressure of the football allegedly to get a better grip on the ball.
So we would figure there should be some kind of noticeable difference in the way the ball is going to be touched upon, right? So if Tom Brady, if it's supposed to be 10 pounds of pressure per inch and you drop it down to 9 pounds, it's supposed to, if it's going to have an effect for Tom, it should have an effect for everybody, right?
It's supposed to be easier to grab and throw and easier to catch. That's the theory. And yeah, if it was intercepted, sure, it's easier for the other guy to handle.
See, we keep missing something here. We keep talking about the people who are involved and paid to play and paid to win. Their minds and attention is on, when a wide receiver goes out and he catches a pass over the efforts of the defensive back, that wide receiver, he feels good about himself. He says, man, I just did a wonderful thing. I caught a ball. That's what he's thinking about. Now, when the receiver gets the ball and finishes the play, who does he give it back to?
The referee.
Oh, my goodness. Not the referee. Not somebody representing the integrity of the game, somebody who's there to be sure that the game is played fairly and that all of the equipment and supplies utilized for this game
are in proper
condition. Now, not only does the referee inspect the ball before the game, he's the one who inspects the ball after and before what? Every play.
Each play.
Every
during
play.
the game, the referees are handling the ball.
So if there's something wrong with the ball, well, let me go back. So the team lines up to play, and there's this imaginary line called a line of scrimmage between the teams. Now the players are anxious to play; they're doing their job, and one of them gets a little over anxious, and he gets across that line before he's supposed to. What happens? Referee throws a flag. He calls a penalty. He says you're out of line. Pun intended. The referee's the guy in charge. He's touching the ball before and after every play. If there's something wrong with the pressure of the ball, who should be the first to notice it? Who is there playing with the ball no matter who is on offense or who's on defense? They're one consistent person touching the ball before each and every play, and after each and every play is the referee. Now, to me, it's a pretty simple situation. What's the heck Tom Brady or his team got to do with whether the ball is too hot or too cold or too fat or too skinny? That's the referee's job throughout the game. They change balls when the ball is too wet, right? You see the referee throw the ball out and give me another ball. Why? Mm-hmm. Because I can feel that this ball is too wet.
Mm-hmm. And the quarterback, the center, has a rag hanging from the back of his pants.
Now,
what's that for? But to wipe the ball off.
To wipe the ball off. Now, the referee, if there is a standard for the pressure in the ball, seems like the referee would be the person that would maintain and be responsible for maintaining that.
And let me make this simple for you. The length of the field, the height of the goal, all that kind of stuff is up to somebody else. That's what they have standards and people to watch over. The referee's part of that.
Players have nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it. So if you're going to say that some apparatus of the game was incorrectly adjusted, isn't that someone else's responsibility to be checking on that? But now they want to take it instead of putting it on the organization and their lack of oversight. In other words, somebody should have foreseen this and they ought to be squeezing the ball, checking and doing whatever they need to do,
right? Because
that is part of their job. Instead, they pick the individual and they scapegoat the issue. It's his fault.
You just said it, scapegoat. Now let's look at this other game of life that we play, the one between our authorities and the people. We realize that over a period of time that we have a nation that was founded within the system of slavery. And to justify that system, it made a constant public relations statement that said that white people were superior, black people were inferior, and established and maintained institutions to continue that attitude and push that attitude. Now, over a period of time, we've had the civil rights movement. You had the Civil War, civil rights movement, all kinds of things that have taken place. And let's look at the Watts Rebellion and the message that it gave. That message said that, things are not right. We need to make some improvements, and some improvements were starting to be made. And, and life is much better in many senses, in most senses, for all of us in America than they were, say, at the turn of the century. Except, the only thing that's been consistent is the billionaires and millionaires. They've stayed rich. Everybody else has gone through enough changes to appreciate, the fact that change is possible and that I can make things better. So, as society has changed and lightened up a little bit, and institutions have made quote-unquote policy changes that haven't quite really changed the policy, we get down around now to the last line of defense on this racism that we created to get America started using free labor to get a head start on everybody. There's been no repayment on the loan of the labor yet. Some people want reparations and things of that sort, but that's not my argument now. My argument now is that we have left the police out as the last line of defense against this racism and last line of offense toward equity. And that's not fair. The police have been doing what they've been told to do by the policymakers. And it's going to take them, as we see, time for them to change and be retrained and things of that sort. But the police are collecting the blame. We've got mayors and city councils and people who elect them who have not done their job. They have not made it clear to the police departments what needs to be done, what we will accept, what we will not accept. And I think all of that should give us some hope. At the same time, it gives us some level of disappointment because we can see who to point our fingers at. Those people that we have elected, those people that we have selected, those people that we have expected to take charge and do the right thing. But I want you to notice something about your anatomy. As you point that finger at them, or as we point that finger at them, that one, see it? There happens to be 1, 2, 3 fingers pointed back at me and pointed back at whoever's making that gesture. We all have some responsibility here, Mr. Evans.
That is correct.
We all have some responsibility here, and I want to take a moment to give some accolade and applause to those people who have been busy on social networking because they have made a change.
Well, they have. It allows the opportunity to introduce that question, that key question that really strikes at the heart of the issue. Many people have lots of information. They back up their case, and they're really excited about it. And they go out and do things based on this conviction because they have never encountered the question that makes them pause and wonder, is the answer that I've adopted actually the final answer? Will this actually get me what I'm looking for? Or have I deceived myself?
But that's the beauty
of the social networking lets those questions come up that make you go,
Okay.
Because so many people are putting it in.
That's right.
And this sparks thought and consideration. And this is always good because it leads us closer to that truth that we really need to be working from. That's the beauty of social media. It gets so many people putting their ideas out there.
I understand through a survey that was taken in July that and prior over the years that before Ferguson, that basically 1 out of 4 white people felt that there needed to be some changes made in race relations. But the other 9 basically felt that, things have been changed enough and blacks and other minorities need to, kind of step up. Things are much better. Well, since Ferguson, that number of 1 has gone to 4. So 4 in 10 white people now feel that there needs to be a change, that more things need to be changed, and that indeed African Americans and other minorities are being mistreated by society institutionally as well as by the police, which is the tip of the iceberg that we see all of the time. But that these other elements are there and have been there, and thanks to social networking and conversation with people, I was saying earlier, Leonard, that I used to think that maybe people were at the table on their cell phones talking to other people away from the table. But in the survey, it discussed the fact that social networking puts a little buffer. It makes it a little easier, for you to read somebody saying something that you don't necessarily agree with, and as opposed to hearing them. When you hear them and you're in the same room, you tend to start talking while they're talking, and they're talking while you're talking, and there's not too much listening getting done. But with the chat room,
interaction.
Yeah,
when you're face to face, you're in the ring.
Yes.
Okay, when you have that distance, you can be in the ring virtually, virtual reality. At the same time, you're outside of the ring objectively, so you're not actually being hit. You can think clearer. You can get your thoughts out more completely. You don't have that emotion of the proximity. It's a different situation. What I'm getting at is this is the position I enjoy, sitting here on the phone and not actually sitting next to you there. There's a different dynamic. More of an opportunity to look clearly at what's going on without the personal reactions.
Mr. Evans, I don't want you to infer that I have a body odor or breath problem that makes it difficult.
No, everybody goes through this.
Or maybe someone should tell me something. I noticed Mr. Garcia, our mood master, is operating in the studio, and I'm in here alone. Maybe somebody should have told me something. Do I have a? Well, I'll check myself a little bit later. But that is the power of social media, and one of the
exactly. It lets you sit back a little bit
and analyze, and not take it so personal.
You're also missing something, though, because I don't want to describe being there as being a negative. It's actually a positive, because it actually offers an opportunity for a better exchange and understanding. There's better communication face-to-face, more complete communication face-to-face.
Well, maybe too much communication can slow down an understanding, because once again, when you're face-to-face, the level of arguing and not listening is raised also. Whereas with this chat, we get an opportunity to say something, to let someone else say something, and we're kind of forced to read, and that moves us a little slower. So I think there's some benefit to not actually being in the same room with the people that you want to talk to. But tell you what, let's take a short break. We're going to come back and see how we can continue this conversation and move toward some level of reconciliation about some of these issues and facts. One of the things that we need to be real concerned about is the environment. As we talk about how important it is for people to get along, let's think about those people that live along that Colorado River, 126 miles of it, that has turned orange and brown from toxic waste from a mine. And this was water that is being described two ways. We'll talk about that when I come back. The way the water is being described depending on who's talking about it. One group says, well, we'll be back right after this break. I'm Wallace Allen. Don't go away, but do go do what you got to do, and you got about 90 seconds to do it. We'll be right back.
Second stage is cut. We're now in orbit. Stabilizers up. Running perfect. Starting to collect. Requested data. What will it affect when all is done? Things Major Tom.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
You're listening to KCAA, your good neighbor along the way.
Across the stratosphere, a final message.
This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, on the case for truth and justice, with the right information to help improve the situation. Folks, we might be wallowing in inactivity, wallowing in bad decisions, wallowing in mistreatment of others. But we are still an elbow away from standing up, straightening up, and doing the right thing simply by sharing the way we should share, by caring the way we should care. I've been joined in the studio, Mr. Evans. I guess the body odor thing is not a problem, you know. I hope not, but he'll be back. But we've had Miss Naomi Riggins join us. How are you this morning, Miss Naomi?
I'm great.
Very good. Talking to that microphone so that they know you're not afraid here, you know.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we've been talking about some of the issues and problems and potential solutions. I've likened the issue of our policy, those things that we're supposed to do, the government policy, the government officials not standing up and doing what they're supposed to do, leaving us pretty much lost to their power. For instance, the EPA was doing a project, a study, a movement of materials, the leftover contamination from a gold mine in Colorado, and it was the EPA moving this water from one pool to another, and they did something that caused this contaminated water to go into the Colorado River, a stretch of river that runs, well, it's a feeder river to the Colorado River, 126 miles of, as the people who live there called it, pristine, beautiful water, fish, boating, or recreation river. But as the EPA describes it, they're saying, well, it's not that much effect. You know, this river was contaminated anyway. You know, the fish and things along the way, they're kind of used to this, and we don't really expect to have too much of a problem. I don't understand. If the water was clear enough to see through, this is certainly the water that the people along that route were drinking. This was their drinking water. Now it goes from clear to bright orange. Now, Miss Riggins, let me ask you this: you probably, you've got a nice clean face. You look like you get up in the morning, wash your face and do it. What if you went and turned the faucet on, and instead of water, the regular water you see coming out, you got this bright orange, liquid, muddy stuff coming out of your faucet? Does that make you happy?
Oh, no, definitely not. A drop is too much of contamination.
So who do you call?
The EPA.
The EPA said, don't worry about it. This isn't, it's just a little, think about it, like food dye.
Now, I'm worried about what other bodies of water they contaminated, and they just kind of overlooked it.
Well, it's kind of like my mother told me. She said, once I catch you in a lie, I wonder how many I missed you in.
True.
So,
it's all.
But the EPA, they didn't lie about it. They just said, hey, it's built. Well, maybe the lie is in terms of the effect, in terms of the contamination, in terms of their real responsibility. But as one of the residents of the area said, I understand people in California can, get in trouble for using too much water and possibly go to jail. If I had done something that caused this kind of contamination, I would be going to jail. The EPA is just sending out notices.
Now, hold on. If I may.
Please defend them, Leonard. Please.
This was an accident.
Okay, let me tell you about the accident with the elephant standing on my foot. I know he didn't do it on purpose, but could you get him to get his big ass off of me?
They're doing the best they can, man.
The best they can.
It's not good enough.
The mining company.
No, the mining company. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes, I did.
But they put this waste in a pond. They stored it properly.
Yes.
But the EPA came along, and they were doing some testing. They knocked the plug out, and all this stuff ran out into the river. Now, what is it? It's primarily heavy metals that are toxic. But these things they sink. They settle to the bottom. That's not good because there's things that feed on the bottom. It has long-term effects. But the water itself, after a while, like the engineer said, just let the water run. It will clear itself up, and then you can use it. Meanwhile, the communities along the river, my understanding is they have a 90-day supply of fresh water. By then, the river will have purified itself as running water does. The bad stuff is still in the bottom, and it will have long-term effects, but you'll be able to drink the water because the toxicants have settled out of it.
That Kool-Aid tastes that good?
That's what it comes down to.
What's the flavor of that Kool-Aid? Is it red Kool-Aid or
Well,
yellow Kool-Aid, or does it match the color of the river?
While it is brown and yellow and all that stuff, because that is arsenic, cesium, cadmium, other toxic heavy
all
metals.
Things that appear normally in nature, just not quite in the densities
but not in these
and levels
concentrations.
of.
It's in nature naturally, but not in these concentrations, and it's not harmful until it's concentrated.
So it seems like doing the best that they can, maybe to explain away the dead fish and possibly the couple of hundred dead
what
bodies
they
of
need to
people
tell
that might
me
drink
is
this
that
water
they've
or eat
changed
the
their
fish.
procedures to be certain that they don't do something stupid
Again?
like this ever again.
Now, that sounds good from our point of institution. But as we go back to individuals and the responsibility that individuals end up having as a result of the policy of our authorities. So now the individuals along the river have got to figure out how to get some more water. They've got to figure out how to water their crops, how to make up for the money that the tour. Oh, of course, they could promote that this is, just a great time to come out to the newly named Orange River and hang out. Maybe it's just a promotion problem. Miss Riggins is a marketing specialist. Maybe I'm looking at this thing all wrong. Miss Riggins, should they be promoting the fact that they've got the only Orange River in North America and trying to get people to come?
It's a great selling tool if that's what they want.
Yeah.
But, a couple of years back, they had that tuna contamination with the mercury found in there.
Yeah.
I still think twice before I open a can of tuna.
Now, see, that's not fair. Because I love tuna. now maybe I'm getting more than my share.
So I don't know
in terms of the mercury and in terms of, but
that's a good example. What do? They monitor the tuna for mercury levels, and some batches you say, well, don't fish here, don't do this, and so what do they do now? They're now going to have to come in. The EPA will pay to monitor the well.
Oh, the EPA is going to pay. Pay with whose money?
The riverbed and get in the water supply.
They're going to pay with whose money? Make it sound like the EPA has a bank of their own, and that they're not.
They'll pay with their budget, their money.
No,
you mean
their budget?
That's my tax dollars.
Now you hit me in the pocket right after you hit me in the nose. Let's not forget that this is why our social networking and talking to each other and calling our elected and selected and expected doers to do the right thing, because it circles around back to us again. Just like Deflategate. We play with the ball that the NFL gives us, inspected by the referee before the game, between each and every play. But if there's something wrong with the pressure of the ball, who gets the blame?
But let's look
Tom
at
Brady and all the people that like him.
Let's look at how it comes up. Sore losers. Does anybody ever hear that phrase before?
Oh, okay. I'm going to carry this analogy a little further. Now you're talking about the black people who were sour about the fact that the police were the ones carrying the last message of racism and beating and shooting black folks in the name of safety that the government has established as a need, because we're still in the echo of the racism and slavery that we started the country with. We haven't effectively turned that message off. So
we've never addressed the issue, really. As my mother was saying, you have a group of people where the law has said you can't learn to read and write. You're not allowed to teach the group.
Go to jail if I catch you reading to that little black kid.
And then one day you say,
got teachers around here now still operating under that premise.
Go ahead. You're free. You can do whatever you want to. And no one has ever stepped in and plugged that. Now, a lot of people have tried, and one thing I don't hear enough of is credit to the white people that have made all of these differences possible. So that now it's like black people are alone trying to do this. They have excluded all of these people that want to be involved and historically have been involved from day one. because it was only they, the white people, that could make a difference because blacks had no power at that time. But no credit is given to this. And I think that
some
is a
is.
big thing.
I think that you're making a semi-valid point, but I think most of us who are involved in actively involved realize that not only are the dark-skinned black people involved and some white people involved, but that the light-skinned black people who maybe have been passing are reaching back and getting involved too.
Nobody talks about them.
Well,
because
that's because back in the 40s, the
this.
population of black people was reduced
important
by some
story,
15% because there were that number of black people who looked enough white to be able to pass. And this is something that took place, and we know that in the 40s. If that was important in the 40s, how important do you think it was back in the 1860s for if you were light-skinned enough to not? Yeah.
Look at 1850 America.
I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the brotherhood is probably closer, much closer than we think. I like the idea of this new DNA thing going around where people are able to trace their ancestry. I hear people coming out and saying, hey, to the black crowd, hey, let's trace your ancestry and see how close you are or where your bloodlines go and how much you have, how much African are you and how much European are you? And they find that question is just as valid for the white people in the audience as it is for black people. And we find that, we are pretty much we're pretty much the same, except when it comes to access and to opportunity. And there's some silly games that we play that keep us fighting with each other. I like this idea of the social network. It seems, Ms. Riggins, that people now could sit next to each other, like you and I, and if we don't talk to each other, if we do the chat, it creates enough of a buffer that, you're able to say things to me that, I might argue out loud about if we were talking.
But if we keep the thumbs working, you get to know the other person before their appearance comes into the evaluation.
I think that's important. I think that's really important. You
and
don't know who you're talking to in some
Let
cases.
me tell you something about selling investments over the telephone and what I've seen in 25 years.
Oh, now before we take this break,
I'll make it very short.
Let's take the break. Let's take the break and let you do it when you come back, because it's very important for people to know the power and the strength of the man that I'm talking to on the phone. I'm not talking to someone who just able to, get up and go to the appliance store and sell refrigerators to people who walk in looking for a refrigerator. I'm not talking about somebody who works at the car dealership, that people have been dreaming about getting a car, and they walk into the dealership and they see the car they want and they use the salesman to get it. That's not the person I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy who's able to call you while you are eating dinner. I didn't say after dinner. I didn't say preparing for dinner. I said while you have put that fork in your mouth, ready to chew that juicy, whatever your spouse or
choice of the evening is,
whatever it is, and speak instead to Mr. Leonard. I want to sell you a gold mine Evans. We'll be right back after this short break and introduce you again to the powerful, extremely powerful voice. And folks, I'm going to give you this time so you can go and put your wallets outside in the car, lock the door, and put the key in the basement, and then come back. Because once Mr. Evans starts telling you to write that check, you are in heaven. We'll be right back.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909 384-8131.
KCAA, where every day is a great day. KCAA, Loma Linda.
Oh yeah, Mr. Hendrix, all around the watchtower. He's singing that Bob Dylan song. You know, it's something that we all should pay attention to. You know, how do we get out of here? You know, there
Well,
must be
one way
some
out-
kind of way out of here.
One way out is money, possession of money that gives you choices
Okay.
and allows you to take advantage of opportunities. My father told me one day that every day on Wall Street, $2 trillion changes hands. $1 trillion is a million times a million.
And understand changing hands, how important that is in a world that charges every time it leaves my hand.
Well, that was his point, that there's a tiny commission made on every dollar that changes hands. So think about how much money is being made every day just transferring that money.
Just think of
And of
how
course-
much money.
And of course, in my mind, I picture people walking around with buckets of water that are simply filled to the brim. They have to spill some. So if I could just find a way to pick up what they had dropped, there was clearly an opportunity to make money. With so much money circulating, the idea that I could get my hands on 100,000 or whatever the number turns out was plausible. I
and
began to think like that. Then it turns out that the idea of selling investments over the phone, you're going to call up someone you do not know and who you will probably never meet in life and get them to send you $20,000, $50,000 on a proposition with an
send some money to someone I've never seen before
on
that
a
I
proposition.
really don't like because I was enjoying my meal. And now you have let my meal get cold, and I'm excited about what you're talking about. And my wife is wondering, what in the heck is going on? But go on.
That's it.
That's it.
On a proposition with an uncertain or non-guaranteed outcome.
You know, the thing about what you were doing, though, Mr. Evans, that is honorable, is that you were talking to the people who had the money about the money you wanted to use. If we go look at the stock room, we see that the benefit is based on the trade, not necessarily what you're trading for. When all of the people in the room are paid to make transactions, not necessarily successful income-generating transactions. I mean income generating for the people
You
whose
mean
money that they're using.
The first priority was not that the client make money? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's certainly not the case because most of those guys front load their commission. You know, you put in, $10,000 for the for my income generating future, and you guys are going to invest my money, and here's 10 grand, and the first thing you do with $1,500 is put it in your pocket. That's the way it usually goes, isn't it?
Well, with annuities, you can't cash them out for several years because they have to make back all the money they've paid out in commissions off the top.
So,
And many partnerships are like that. You know, there's 10%, sometimes 20%.
so just because everybody's doing it doesn't make it right. Just because this is a tradition. You know, speaking of traditions, we go
Well, it's
back.
not a question of right or wrong.
Well,
It's a question
it's
if a person is clear about the proposition, do they want to participate? People do
Now-
this because they believe they're going to make money.
now you're bringing Bill Cosby up. See? Because now we're talking about traditions and signs of the times, and you know what we do now. That's how we do what we do. You know, we front load your commission, we take your money, and if the next 4 or 5 years you're able to come back even, that shows that we've made some good investments for you. So you give me 10 grand now, and if in 5 years I've got 10 grand to give you back. I mean, I'm going to promise that if you die right now, I'll give you the 10 grand, but I'm buying some insurance with your money that I'm going to make more money on than you are. But sign of the times. It's okay for us to take your money because that's what investment banks do. Well, Bill
somebody wants-
Cosby said, you know, if you guys read, if you read Playboy and all the other magazines of the day that talk about how men are supposed to interact and deal with women, you know, you could either give them drunk or give them a Quaalude or hit them in the head. You know, seduce them some kind of way, seduce them with words that don't mean anything or drugs that do. It was a little quicker with the drugs, and a lot of people did it. And Bill did it.
Don't forget that you could be honest with
And I only did it with people who came around. I didn't try to sell a car to people that didn't want a car.
There's always that possibility.
I only gave Quaaludes to people who wanted to hang out with Bill. Come on, we got to do a better standard than that, you right? If we're going to go back and be able to, go back and correctly establish the rules for a time that has already passed, then you know, let's maybe, this is why people talk about reparations. They say, well, it was a long time ago, but my great-great-grandpa did pick a lot of cotton and didn't get paid for it. I mean, and I had a couple of uncles invent some stuff. Well, they invented it, but because they were owned by somebody, what they invented was also owned by somebody.
Well, my business experience has proven to me that you better know what you're selling. The first deal I ever did was an oil deal that turned out to be fraudulent. And
Leonard, you're on the radio.
Clients,
you're on the radio. I don't need those kind of confessions. It might draw me in to this deal. What do you?
Well, but the thing is, man, that I was the one that blew the whistle, if you will.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it took a while, but they got them all. That was a whole different thing. But it taught me that you better investigate what you're doing. So I wound up with two friends who couldn't deliver and came up with a solution, bought assets, and created two-way radio partnerships in Minneapolis and Memphis. We raised $35 million in 16 months, survived the suit with the Federal Trade Commission with no fines, and these
who'd you guys pay off? Who'd you pay off?
Were purchased by Nextel and became part of the cell phone network. I then bought assets for another company, 2,200 channels. It was their core asset. They wound up being purchased by Nextel for $160 million and became part of the cell phone systems. We covered 22 states and 50 million population.
Mr. Evans, I've already told people how you could sell refrigerators to Eskimos. The point in that is that we need you, and like you need us, to turn this weapon of ability to convince on to those people that need to be convinced about change. And those are our elected officials. Those are our bureaucrats. Those are the people. So my point is this, Mr. Evans. If you can get on the phone and talk to someone that you don't know about something they possibly didn't want until you got there, most of us should be able to, from a distance, if necessary, get on our social network and call our congressman, call the business people, put some pressure on them.
We're talking about persuasion here, studying
and
persuasion.
Persuasion and pressure. Persuasion is important for a person like you who've determined that to make their living, you're going to have to be able to persuade people, convince them, manipulate information to put in front of them. But regular people, regular people, Leonard, that are not sales folk, that's who we're trying to empower, to get them to understand that your call, your one phone call, represents pressure, especially if your neighbor and your friends have made their one phone call. We all get these pass it along notes on our email. We used to get them in our hard mail, these chain letters, and there's people who pass them along. Folks, those things put pressure. They put pressure on me if I get a chain letter. Because, I mean, especially if it's from my mother, I've already told her, Mama, don't send me them damn things. You know, now I got to find 10 friends and do all of this stuff. But the point that I'm making is we can create pressure with a simple move, and that it is indeed time to put that pressure on. We've got surveys that demonstrate that the pressure is successful. We are making changes in people's attitude. We need to be able to continue to do that. We need to continue now so that we can make changes in our policy. Not just policy statements, but in our policy. The police need to understand, not because the mayor finally said we don't want any racism, but because they put together some kind of incentives in their training program. They put some kind of incentives in their payment program. They put some kind of penalties in there for when you step across the line, so that we have a clear statement of what is expected from our public safety people. It's just like we have a clear line of what is expected for you to kick a field goal. You know, you got to kick it a certain height and a certain distance, and it's got to go through these two poles. Same thing, these uprights. You know, poles, uprights,
exactly.
Same thing. So we have standards. We have mechanisms for determining whether those standards are met. Also, we have an attitude to shift, to create scapegoats, as you so well put it earlier in the program, Mr. Evans. Scapegoating doesn't do us any good. Folks, we've got environmental problems. We've got temperatures going up. We got people throwing waste away in places that it shouldn't be thrown away. Hey, you may have just thrown something out the window in the car. You may have just left some trash in the street. You may have just talked crazy to somebody that you should be showing some kind of love and compassion to. Folks, wake up. We are in charge. Things will not get better unless we decide to make them better. You don't get up in the morning and your breath get better just because you want it to. You got to go put some toothpaste on that brush, and you got to brush your damn teeth. That's the way things happen. You got to move forward. I hope I'm not being too simplistic. I haven't offended you this morning, have I, Miss? Joe, have I offended you? I did. Good. You know, because you're my temperature guy. You know.
Got folks thinking.
And Mr. Garcia, the Mood Master, he's been on it. He's done a great job. I guess he just does so much better because he's not in here being affected by my attitude. I don't know. But I do appreciate you. Mr. Evans, take care. God bless you. We'll see you next week under Two Circumstances. Ms. Riggins, thanks for coming in.
Willing.
Two circumstances. One, if the good Lord's willing. Two, if the creek don't rise.
Don't rise.
God bless you. See you next week.
Every word I say.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
8 new members into the Hall of Fame. I'm Pete Fox. Of course, among the big names, Tim Brown, Jerome Bettis, Charles Haley, Bill Polian, and of course, Junior Seau, honored by his daughter, Sydney Seau, who did ultimately get to speak.
His athleticism and talent made him extraordinary enough to make it into the Hall, but it is his passionate heart that make him truly legendary and deserving of this tremendous honor.